First of all, my name is Chris Brickley. I would just like to say thank you all for coming on a Monday night in November. It's much appreciated. A few thanks briefly just before we get underway. Thank you to Mono, to the staff, to Sean and Katie, and everyone involved tonight. Thank you to Andrew for fantastic sound. Thank you to Depp and Monorail. Thank you to Martin McClenaghan, without whom sitting on my right, without whom we wouldn't be here. Thank you to my old school friend John Kilbride for doing our cheering tonight. Thank you to Grant, thank you to Harriet, thank you to Bobby and numerous other people tonight. And without further ado, we're going to do a short sort of Q&A until I sense that you're a little bit restless or fidgety. Thank you to all of you who've bought a book, and if you're thinking about it, please do support independent publishing. Thanks very much for coming again.
So, just to echo some of the things that Chris said, it's great to see so many people here. I'm sure I've been at gigs here that have had a lot fewer people at them, so it's good to see a good crowd tonight. So, we're talking about the book. Chris put the book together. Martin took the photographs, so I'll be talking to them both and asking a few questions to them, as Chris said, until we start to feel a wee bit uncomfortable or whatever. So, if I could first ask you both, how did this project come together? How did you first become aware of Martin's pictures, and how did you first become aware of Chris's project with the books?
Well, he answered as well. He saw me first.
Seamlessly passed back to me. That's a very simple answer to that. In 2019, I think it was, the first book, 16 years that I did the music book, the gargantuan, now sold out. I thought there were certain pictures you've got to have in there, and I had seen some pictures of the Cramps in the Fall at Glasgow Tech. Harry Papadopoulos took some, and another person captured that moment from the crowd, and I tracked Martin down on a social media platform, and I got in touch and I said, can I use one or two of these? He was hiding in plain sight under a Twitter handle, so we started communicating. It turned out he had taken other pictures of key guys at that time, so he gave me pictures for the other 2 or 3 books that I've done, and I thought, this guy has got to have other photographs, and I had always wanted to do a book with broader themes. So after a period of negotiation, I got Martin to go through his negatives, and it took some time and a wee bit convincing, but here we are.
So Martin, you've got, obviously the book focuses entirely on your photographs, and some of your photographs have been in one of Chris's previous books, but how did you first find yourself getting into photography? How did you first become interested in this and get these pictures taken?
I got given a Vivitar Instamatic when I was about 15, to these wee cartridges, and I quite liked what I got. And when I went to 5th year at school, I got a bursary. The state paid, I think I got £300 or something. With it I bought a camera. I bought a 35mm SLR camera and a nice brown elephant cord jacket. Still,
You've always got to look the part, that's a key thing.
It was good, and my mum and dad took the rest of the money. So I bought a camera on the basis of nothing really, just because I had some money. And I just kind of wondered about taking pictures. But at that time, then to get 17, I started to try and get signed into the student unions, listening to John Peel on the radio, going to gigs, not realising actually that it was part of a sort of golden age. But you know, 17, just doing what was in front of you. And I had this camera, so I was determined to try and take it and use it. And I was lucky enough to, you know, a lot of the times I would take pictures, not really know what I was doing, and I would film into the chemist, which is what you did, and come back with nothing. just occasional blobs of colour or or just lots of black.
I
Because
always liked the pictures when you got them back with a big sticker across them. Processing errors.
pre-sticker days, they just gave you the packet bag and nothing. Not even that. But it was because of the flashing lights at the gigs, the camera, the light meter, it couldn't keep up, it couldn't expose. So I just bought a big old flash gun. And that's like a lot of the images that are in the book are from that big cheap flash gun, because I knew I could get something. When all the lights went down, I could go bang, and it would light it, and I would get something, even if it was, quite flat. But I'd get something. The other ones I would keep taking pictures and hopefully catch something with colour in it. But other than that, just wandered about taking pictures.
To talk about the music, obviously, your music photography wasn't one of Chris's earlier books. There's quite a lot of them in this book as well. And you talk about in the book how you were kind of guided, if you like, by John Kilbride reading the NME. What were you listening to at the time? What kind of music did you get into?
Well, I was only taking pictures of bands I wanted to see, because it wasn't for any other purpose. So all the pictures I took of U2 were accidental, because I didn't even know who they were.
That's pretty good, actually.
I was there to see I'm not being snobby about it. I'm being snobby about it. I was there to see altered images.
I think that time's shown that it was the wisest decision there.
So the bands I were into were the bands I was taking photographs of. Unfortunately, I couldn't take pictures of it. I couldn't get the camera onto the Apollo because the bands were too big, or the management was they had control over the images, and the bouncers just wouldn't let you in with a camera. They checked, you got searched when you went in. So that was, it would have been really hard to take pictures at the Apollo anyway, because the big high stage and they were miles away. So at least at the student unions, you could be right in front of the band, So, but yeah, it was the bands I was interested in the photograph.
What kind of bands were you listening to? What kind of bands were you into by then?
Oh, like the Fall, predominantly.
But you seem to have been in the right place at the right time for some pretty amazing gigs. I think the first photographs I actually saw by you were some of the ones in New Order at the Plaza. Must have been 1981 or 1982, the first time they played up here.
Yeah.
And I think those were the first photographs actually. I didn't know, obviously it was yourself that had taken them. I'd seen them when they appeared in Chris's book. I'm sure I'd seen them somewhere before, but there were some quite historic, quite definitive images of early New Order there.
They were rubbish. no harm to them. The sound was terrible, and the Plaza was a terrible place for a gig.
I think you got some of that in some of the photographs. You see Barney slumped over the mic, over the amplifier, despairing.
Yes. There's other pictures I took. The Fall were notoriously inconsistent, and sometimes they were fantastic, and sometimes they were just appalling. And I don't know if that the time I photographed them at the Plaza. I can't remember I don't know if it was that time or if it was another time. Some of the guys in the audience will remember. But we actually booed them. Well, my favourite band.
I can agree with you about them being inconsistent. I've seen them loads of times as well.
We booed them and then just left them rotten. But yeah, it's loads of pictures.
But even if the band were bad, the pictures could be good.
Yes. That's it, they're quiet. See, the pictures aren't drunk.
So you end up with quite a collection of pictures. And how did you get those over to Chris for this book? And how did you go about selecting the pictures that appear in this new book?
Can I ask a subsidiary question? How was it perambulating about Govan and Gorbals in the elephant cord jacket with a big flash gun?
I don't know.
Sorry, what's the question?
How did you go about choosing the pictures for this book? Because obviously you've quite a selection of things to go from. For example, you talked about all your music photographs, but the book's got quite a lot of other things as well, from portraits to the landscapes to views of the city. And obviously Chris did probably quite a big job going through things to select them. So how did you prioritise the pictures that appear in the book?
Well, as I said earlier, I had done books on music previously, and I thought that I really wanted to do something about the city. And Martin obviously had really liked capturing architectural views and the changing natures, the transient period of Glasgow at that time. And I loved the Clyde Coast pictures, and I loved the kind of human interest in there, but it came to sort of, I realised that I couldn't downplay the music aspect just because we'd included some of Martin's pictures in other books. And that is when it came to me, wouldn't it be interesting to do something where you're looking at the sights and sounds in context? So you're looking at these now iconic bands and gigs, and what did people look like with that big flash gun dancing about in the plaza when it's all looking a bit dog-eared? And what did the city look like at that time? Because we talk now about post-punk and reverential hushed tones, but you know, as a Glaswegian person who has not lived here that much since I was at school, the city that you see in the book is how I still picture it every time. I love coming back, but that's still how I see it. There's a wee bit less of it each time I come. So I think that's part of the fascination for this material. And I think about Martin perambulating about the city and just capturing things that caught his interest, as he puts it mildly and modestly. And he has a really interesting neutral tone that's really valuable when you're approaching this material, I think. So I just, after that, I thought, let's get a cross-section of images and do it thematically. And it was hard to leave things out.
I think there's a kind of social history as well going on here. I mean, from your previous books were more music focused, but this is perhaps the more sort of explicitly looking at the sort of social history of the city, and the city as either a backdrop or as a sort of foreground for a lot of the music that's going on, either where it happens or what causes some of the music to happen.
Yeah, I think all of the books really are social history. I think popular music, street fashion, popular culture is a much underestimated and undervalued aspect of culture, and I think it can be quite instructive and valuable to view things in this kind of context. You know, when you're looking at it's the dialogue between the city and what has created the space for these bands and that music and these audiences to come together, because that's how we found each other, and that's how we found kinship, and you know, the little signals that we gave off through a badge or a haircut or an elephant cod jacket. You know?
Well, I think you've managed to capture quite a lot of like the social history at the time when this was taken. I mean, it's called Post-Punk City, but essentially it's covering that kind of era of late 70s to early 80s, that kind of time scale of where things were changing and the city was changing quite fundamentally. And were you aware of that at the time? Were you just taking the pictures, or were you conscious that things were moving, the city was changing?
I think one of the things I was, to not answer your question, I was least conscious of was the time I was living in. That I was living in what was coming to be the end of an analogue era. You know, by using the steam camera, before mobile phones, before personal computers were ubiquitous. It was looking back on them now. You know, that's kind of what they mean to me. They're kind of signaling the end of an analogue era. That's all. You know, the posters were handwritten, scribbled, the tickets were done old, Adana press machines, you know, everything was clunky. That's what it looks like to me. I wasn't aware of the change that was going on around me, because you're just living the life that you live. But I can see it now, you know, because the Glasgow that I grew up in was a midden, you know, a post-industrial, just a mess, just nothing. There seemed to be nothing nice in Glasgow, and that was kind of what I photographed, and it does seem like a bit miserable, but that was what was in front of me. I'm happy to say that Glasgow looks a lot better now that I've left.
I think one of the things that's quite interesting is that you have a talk about the book being like, a post-punk city, and you have that kind of energy and that kind of outlet of music, and the backdrop of it is, a fairly depressed looking city. The thing that's coming in is probably Thatcherism, and that's going to cause a lot more grief to a lot of people. But you have this, the music going on in the city, and a lot of people hooking onto that, and that becoming part of their identity and bringing a sort of, light into the city and into people's lives, and transforming people and for the positive.
Yeah, I didn't see too many people, running off to make successes of themselves in the financial sector and dentistry. There wasn't anything. There weren't many opportunities, for working class kids finishing school, unless you were going into a trade that your father could get you into, or you were looking at finishing school and then just dropping off the end, unless you could get into college or something like that. So I think, of course, people were getting into bands and pouring their energy and their hopes into them as well.
I think that's something that's touched upon in the foreword by Bobby Gillespie, when he talks about the city as in this era, is kind of moving from being, if you like, the nostalgia of being this industrial city and this powerhouse of a city, to this uncertainty of the early 1980s, and toward much of it still continuing to this day. And I think that kind of touches on that sort of uncertainty that, there was Thatcher promised this huge, new way of thinking, and it didn't really trickle down to people living in Glasgow, but there was other ways that people could get by, and music was perhaps one of the ways, and that gave people a sort of release and a way of living.
And being on the dole gave me the time to fart about taking pictures, rather than going working. So there was that. Absolutely. Well, you could get by on the dole, okay, at that time, who's the benefit, and it was enough.
Yeah, it was that gave the sort of foundation to a lot of people who could begin careers in music because they were able to sign on and have the time and actually have enough to get by on it.
Yeah, and go to Paris Market and buy books and sit up all night and read and prove yourself, as we all did.
I think that's a good point, isn't it? Is people being given the space to create things, and I think that spark is often created by people from different backgrounds or different outlooks coming together, whether it's at gigs or everybody else, and sparking off each other. And one of the things that we were both careful to do with this, I think, precious material, is not to be tempted to provide a commentary about what we're looking at, because that's up to the individual. And I think that's part of Martin's strength, as I say, is the detachment, it seems to me, from the subject matter. He is an eye in a position, taking a picture for various reasons, whether it's technical in terms of developing it. It's up to the individual looking at the book to interpret those images any which way they wish, and I think that's as it should be.
I think one of the things that really strikes me about the photographs is that they're very human in their scale. If you look at some of the portrait photographs in it, you feel that you kind of get to know some of the people through the pictures, and they're telling their stories in a way through the pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to keep people at the centre of it, and Mark's perspective on the subject matter is different from mine. He had a concern that it was going to be a bit depressing as a whole, and I didn't agree, and I don't agree. I don't know what you think, those of you who've seen the book, but as I say, that's part of it, isn't it? Is that people's interpretations are individual and different. How are we doing? Are we getting fidgety yet?
Well, I think it's been really interesting for me to have Chris do this, because since I got a copy of the book, practically every night I've sat and read it, like cover to cover, and trying to make sense of the sense he makes of what I gave him, which is, I don't even know if I've got there yet. It's, because I said, I can't see a book and this is just a pile of random pictures of anything. So I'm really, it's kind of, I really appreciate what Chris has done, because I would never have done it. I really appreciate he's taken the time to make his sense, and in a way this is his book. I took the pictures, but it's his book. It's his view of that time through those pictures, which I think I'm impressed with it.
From looking at Mono the pictures and looking at the book as a whole, I think one thing that kind of strikes me as a common thread that runs through it, from even the music pictures to the portrait pictures, pictures of the city, pictures of beyond the city. I think one thing that kind of almost runs through it is probably the idea of community. It's about people in the city as the city being as a community. It's about maybe people finding their own community through music and their friendships and all the sort of lifestyle that perhaps entails. And would you think that's the case? Do you think that's something that's going through the pictures?
It may well be. It wasn't going through my head. I wasn't too big on community, but
you talked in the book about how you describe yourself as Glaswegian before you described yourself as Scottish, British, or any other kind of handle. Yeah. But you'd say you were Glaswegian before that.
Uh-huh.
How would you explain that? What makes somebody Glaswegian, and how does that feel?
Well, to have an Irish Catholic father and a Scottish Protestant mother, and grown up in Glasgow, I think that pretty much encapsulates it.
So it means you've got the guilt as well as opposed to work ethic.
Yeah. I'm up to my knees in my own feeding guilt.
Looking at some of the photographs, some of the portrait shots are probably pretty personal, like family pictures and so on. They're quite, and some are quite moving as well. How do you feel about seeing those represented in a book?
If I didn't want anybody to see them, I wouldn't have, kind of made it into a book.
Can I just interrupt and take responsibility for that? I'm sorry to interrupt, Martin. I think I should do, because I felt it would have been very easy to leave some of those pictures out. I don't know Martin well. I've got to know him better, but if you are trying to make concrete a selection of work from a person's life story, and I think if you choose to remove challenging or emotional or moving stuff, and I remember badgering him a wee bit for a picture that I'd seen that he hadn't sent me. I didn't know whether he'd sent me or not on purpose, but eventually he did send me, and I'm really glad that it's in there, because it's one of the most powerful pictures in the book. And I'm happy that he has had the courage to include those, because I think parts of Martin's history will resonate with all of us, and they do with me. So it's all too easy to leave out difficult stuff or moving material, and I thought it was important to put it in. It's not just that, because aspects of that book are classic Glasgow. They are the Glasgow that's known throughout the world, the kind of Glasgow of myth and legend, and that's good, but there is much more to it than that. There should be, so that's why they're in.
There's quite a few pictures in the book that go beyond Glasgow. Looking at some of them in Fife, some of them down Ayrshire. How did these come about, and how did you see them as fitting in with what you were photographing at the time? Did you just happen to find yourself in these places, or did you go out of the way to go to them?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just there. Fife, I had family there, so we were there quite a lot. So
again, you seem to have captured the pictures of the people there quite well. You seem to have sort of entered in. I mean, were the people that you knew, were the people you were close to, or were they just people you just happened to catch your eye?
No, nobody in Fife. No, none of the pictures that were taken, just random people.
And how did that go at the time? You know, I mean, obviously we're sort of looking at how everybody's got a camera on their phone, but to actually go around to the camera at the time and just take pictures of people and ask them to take a shot of them and so on, how did that go down with people?
I wasn't really one of these friendly guys that went up and said, "Oh, I like your book, you know, can I take a picture?" I would just take it and walk away.
Take a picture and run.
Well, no, it was actually, well, there's some bits like in places like Paddy's Market and the bars, and the orange walks and things like that, you weren't welcome with a camera because you could have, you could be from the social, you know, taking pictures of somebody that's got a stall, that's signing on. There's a lot of suspicion. So you had to be quite careful. So one of the things I would do, I learned to do, would be to like see someone, take the camera to my eye, take the picture, then look away, then take the camera down. So you don't make eye contact. You never make eye contact. That invites an interaction that you don't want.
You ever thought about becoming a spy?
But also I had a camera with a waist level viewfinder, which was really good because in terms of people looking at you, you're just like, I like that. So it's quite effective.
So they didn't know what you were doing at all.
But it was really hard because the image was upside down and back to front. If you were walking, it required a bit of skill.
You could really put yourself in some danger there walking into a wall or something.
Or an orange walk.
Shall I just interject at this point and say, this has been great, but I think, has anyone got any questions for Martin from the floor? Because you've all been very patient.
What kind of camera were you using back when you first started? What kind of camera was it?
It was a Yashica FR1 with an electromagnetic shutter and a 50mm f2 lens. So is that the end of the technical questions? Get back to the funny stuff.
I've got a jackets question. So, about 42 years ago, you would be a lieutenant, as it was called then.
Yeah.
You used to wear a leather jacket with Hail the New Puritans in the back there.
Yeah.
And my wife said to me tonight before I left, "Go and ask him what Hail the New Puritans was."
That was the fall.
Oh,
It wasn't leather, it was a Korean combat jacket that I tried to dye black, but it just came out in a kind of dirty grey colour. And I had two wardrobe hooks that I put on the epaulets, chrome wardrobe hooks that I thought was quite nice. It was really fashionable.
Next question. Did you get an army surplus stock?
Say again?
Did you get an army surplus stock?
Yeah, that was all war.
Did you ever get any photographs of bleeding blood?
No, I never seen them.
That's my last question.
How did you get the test department into the Golden Fountain?
I can't
You may not have seen that, but
I can't
I've
remember.
asked him that before, and he doesn't remember how he got the test department into the Golden Fountain.
It was for a thing.
I would have thought that's big.
It was for a thing. Do you remember that pal of yours that did the
I
magazine?
remember they did the performance at the Dome Fountain around about that time, must be around the 90s or so. It was after Duncadoden, that tramway, it was maybe about a year after.
There was something to do. What was that guy, that friend of yours that was putting the magazine together? Yeah. It might have been for that. It was a guy that was putting a magazine together. And I did some pictures for him. I don't know, nothing really came in the magazine then.
But you got test department into a fountain.
Yeah.
That's a pretty achievement in itself.
Any more questions, folks? It just needs a lot.
Another question down there?
That's a good idea.
Enjoying the talk, Mark. It's really good. Is there any plans for an exhibition to try and get the work on the wall in a different size or dimension so you can
No, but if somebody wants to sort that out,
Yeah, I think that would be a great
that
idea.
would be fine.
We'll see what comes of this. Is our first public airing. So see what happens.